Dear Google, I have been a loyal Android user for quite some time now. The first smartphone I ever purchased was an LG Optimus L7 running Android Ice Cream Sandwich, and I've been using phones with this operating system, only different versions, ever since. Now, the LG that I mentioned wasn't something you would call a very good phone. For the standards of its time, it could do quite a few things, but it was laggy as hell, so when I was finally able to afford it, I switched to Samsung's Galaxy line of smartphones, which had me pleased. Of course, those were also known for their own performance issues, which would become more apparent over time, but coming from such a laggy user experience, I didn't really mind. I was rather happy with what I had, but I was constantly listening to stories about the awesomeness and divine power of pure Android, and since performance is something that I value most when it comes to smartphones, I was always intrigued, but it wouldn't be until the first quarter of 2018 that I would finally have my first taste of it after purchasing the Google Pixel 2 XL. Now, when you come across a format of videos that starts with "Dear," insert name of a company or public figure, you immediately think you're in for some kind of rant. And call it as you will, but I actually like a number of things that the Pixel has to offer. I like the fact that it's been performing fantastically for me despite it having an older generation processor and substantially less RAM than a lot of its competitors. I like the fact that while writing the script for this video, I couldn't remember the last time an app actually crashed on me or that I had to restart the phone in order to get it working. I like the fact that 5 out of 10 photos that I simply point and shoot with its camera turn out good, while the remaining half turns out amazing. I like the great battery life, I like the simplistic approach to the user experience, and I like the Google Assistant features and squeeze option despite how gimmicky it might seem to some people. I just like it. And you know what I love? I love the fact that almost all the software quirks that bugged me in Android Oreo were fixed or changed in Android Pie. So for me, the pure Android experience I've been hearing about didn't disappoint, no doubt about it. But here's the thing, practically all the things that represented selling points for the Pixel, the things that made people like myself say, okay, I'll spend the extra cash so I can get something that other phones just can't compete with, aren't really worth it anymore. Let me explain. Pure Android is no longer the only smooth Android experience out there. Back in the day when we had the Nexus devices, Pure Android served as sort of a demonstration of how the operating system could look and feel if done right. And in comparison to the OEM versions of Android of yesteryear, the ones that were cluttered with duplicate apps, bloatware, and meaningless gimmicks, the vanilla versions of Android that Google would release really felt like a breath of fresh air, so much that a lot of people would rather go for a device that had less features but ran smoothly than buy a feature-packed device that would flop in performance after just a few months of usage. But as the years went by, smartphone manufacturers actually started getting better at designing their versions of Android. OnePlus, for example, is a company that adopted a similar simplistic approach to the operating system and received a lot of acclaim both by critics and on the market. The Essential phone also offers a near-stock Android experience, and even though it's far from the best Android phone out there, its price has gone down quite a bit and it's already running Android Pie. And don't forget Samsung. As weird as it might sound, but TouchWiz has come a long way since the days it was crippled by its performance issues. Today we have devices like the Galaxy S9 and S9 Plus that appear cleansed of the lagginess the brand was once notorious for and continue to run smoothly even after months of usage. And other manufacturers are getting better as well. For years, Google, you've been trying to show other companies how good this OS can be, and it seems as though they're kind of catching up. And all of a sudden, the thing that was so exclusive to your smartphones, the thing that defined their identity, simply doesn't seem that exclusive anymore. And you know what else? A lot of the things that the Pixel line of phones are amazing for nowadays are not so exclusive either. The Pixel has an amazing camera? Well, so do the new Galaxy devices, as well as the Huawei P20 Pro, and even the OnePlus 6 if you ask a lot of people. The Pixel has great battery life, so does a number of other phones. Pixel has good speakers. Well, most other phones might not have front-firing ones, but in some cases offer an even better stereo sound experience. Almost all the competitors from the Android spectrum of the smartphone world offer more features than the Pixel with similar or arguably better performance and at a lower price. Even if the Pixel in some cases does have, say, a more consistent camera or receives updates more frequently, the benefits just don't seem to warrant the hefty price tag anymore. The price
is too goddamn high.
Dear Google, I've heard quite a few people call the Pixel an ugly phone, and I don't really agree with that. I personally think of your design choices as industrial, which doesn't necessarily mean I think you couldn't be doing a better job. The first generation of Pixel phones had a pretty standard physical design for the time. When the Pixel 2 and Pixel 2 XL came out, the smaller device seemed like a slightly modified version of the previous generation phones, while the larger one showcased a newer design approach. But you also removed the headphone jack, which is a move you mocked Apple for just 1 year prior to you doing it yourself. Now that we're getting closer to the release of the third generation Pixel phones, it appears that you've once again decided to follow a trend that Apple set, but in a much uglier fashion. Now, when it comes to technology, especially smartphones, I'm one of those consumers that have a hard time accepting drastic changes, especially if I find them unnecessary, but I eventually accept them. It's been like that with the removal of the headphone jack, and even with the infamous notch that a lot of manufacturers are featuring on their phones. But if all the leaks for the Pixel 3 XL are correct, at best, I can say that it's just done wrong. At worst, it's just downright ugly. If I understand correctly, the whole purpose of a notch is to accommodate the necessary components phones have on their top front, while using as much space for an edge-to-edge display. But if you have one that is this big, and plus a big chin at the bottom, I just feel like your design and engineering team could have came up with a far better solution. With that said, if I were to be someone who would buy a third generation Pixel phone, for all the good things that I have no doubt it will have, I would probably go for the smaller variant, which, according to the leaks, will probably look like a refined but smaller Pixel 2 XL. Google, try to remember what you stood for. Right now it seems like you're just catering to trends just for the heck of it, rather than showing the industry how things can be done differently, which is something you once took great pride in. And you're also not giving as much as you're asking people to give from their wallets. And that's a huge caveat. You're definitely not doing a terrible job, but you need to get certain things in line. And I hope you will, because at the end of the day, I'm a consumer and I'm rooting for you. And I know a lot of other people are too. So, thanks for listening.